What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. So happy to be joining you right after the schedule has dropped. It was a crazy day of leaks and rumors and all this stuff, but we have the 17-game schedule, which still feels gross. So we're going to go over that entire thing, and we're going to have two interviews today as well. Joining me are my guys, Alex and Tyler. Tyler, we'll start with you today. How you doing?
I'm excited to be cautiously optimistic about this schedule. How are you, Steven?
I'm doing great, man. It was a fun day to be on Twitter talking everything. On a personal note, the schedule could not have worked out better for me because the University of Utah plays at San Diego State in Carson the same week as the Chargers host the Dallas Cowboys, and then Utah plays at USC the same week as the Chargers hosting the Browns. So on a personal note, couldn't have worked out better for me. On the Chargers note, we'll get to that point later. Alex, have you had to fight off any Tim Tebow lovers lately?
Yeah, I'm fucking happy that this schedule dropped because I'm sick of this Tim Tebow nonsense. I need it out of the news cycle, and I cannot be more thankful that the NFL dropped this schedule on us because people are talking, oh, wins and losses. He played for but yeah, Urban Meyer is, in general, a plague on society, as are the Dallas Cowboys fans that will overtake SoFi Stadium. And yeah, but I'm ready to talk about the schedule.
Yeah, so the whole Tim Tebow thing is just nuts. Before we get to the schedule, we do have two interviews today. I was able to talk with our good friend Henry Ettinger, who used to cover Rashawn Slater when he was at Northwestern. He also works with us at Blue Wire and is the guy kind of in charge of recruiting us. So that is a fun interview. Again, that's going to be on a separate video if you're watching us on YouTube. And then second, we have Scott Docherman, who covers the Iowa Hawkeyes for The Athletic. Had a great conversation with him about Nick Niemann. So again, if you're watching on YouTube, those are in separate videos. If you are listening in the audio version, those are going to happen right now. All right, so let's talk about the home opener for the Chargers because I think that's just kind of the good place to start. We were kind of talking about this in our group chat as the Dallas Cowboys kind of being the worst case scenario for the Chargers in terms of the home opener. Maybe Raiders would have been second. So Alex, what do you make of the Chargers getting the Dallas Cowboys as their home opener?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very winnable game. Like, I'm sure it'll be the CBS America's Game of the Week or whatever, and they'll throw Romo out there. But, so it'll be a fun game from like a national attention standpoint. Right. But the thing about, that's not one of the primetime games. Kind of is the primetime game, though. But the takeaway from the other ones, they have Chiefs primetime, they have Steelers primetime, and they have Raiders primetime on Monday night. Yeah. And all of those fan bases travel. Cowboys fans don't even travel. They just exist everywhere because they're America's team. And so that's the concerning thing to me about the schedule was not really like, oh, wins and losses, because I could probably add up the schedule and get to like 10-7 or 11-6, whatever. But, we do talk about like fighting for LA, and it's like, the league is valuing the Chargers this year by giving them, I think the third most primetime games, in the league. But it's just a tough thing with the fan base conversation. Now, I do think that, game against the Cowboys might be a good opportunity for them because that's like the first game that everybody will be interested in, who's a season ticket holder, as opposed to like hosting them in week 7 when people have other things to do or don't want to go and resell. But, I hope for the best. And at least if it doesn't go well from a fan perspective, the Cowboys wear blue, so it won't be too bad from fan crowd pictures on Twitter. But I do worry about that a little.
I don't think this is the worst case scenario. I would have much rather played Dallas week 2 than the Steelers, who also overtake the stadium and have been disgustingly overtaking the stadium the past 2 times they've played. And at least the Chargers have some history of success against the Cowboys. The Steelers, they beat them in 2018, but at home, it's been kind of a mess. Yeah. Especially the last time they played, which was like the first time we really knew that Rivers was on the way out. As far as Dallas, the team goes, I think their defense will be improved at some point in this season, but they're going to have a lot of rookies playing a lot of snaps for them, whether it be Parsons, Jabril Cox, Joseph, Golston, and so on. So I think there's just so many rookies that the Chargers can take advantage of that as early as week 2. And, as far as the fan thing goes, this is going to be a multi-year issue. Like if we think that by the time what's the last home game? The KC game, or no, the Broncos game at home. If we think by then the Chargers fans are just going to come out in flocks and fill the stadium, I'd love for that to happen. I'd love to see you guys all out there, but I think this is a long, it's going to take a long time to get enough Chargers
100%.
fans in that stadium, unless there's something that I'm completely missing, because I was at StubHub too, and that wasn't very fun. So, if it's Dallas, whatever, it's going to take some time. They just need to win, and hopefully they at least win week 1. So, fans will show up to the game in week 2.
Yeah, it's not going to be as bad as StubHub. I think that was a combination of a lot of things, and like everybody always wants to go to California, like traveling teams, but when you're in StubHub, it's just magnified because there was only 28,000 seats, and so I think in SoFi, where it's going to be able to be spread out bigger, and I don't even know if it's going to be 100% capacity in week 2. I would love for that to be the case, but given the state of COVID, around the country still going on, I don't know if it's going to be 100% capacity. Then again, the mask mandate is supposedly being lifted in California in June. So there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on the Chargers this year. I love the 3 primetime games. I was maybe hoping for one road game, but you get 3 home primetime games, as Alex alluded to. You're probably going to get Dallas as the game of the week on CBS. Probably get a couple other games of the week as well. So there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on the Chargers, and that obviously is going to be a big opportunity for them as a team and for us as a fan base to be able to go up and show out. So, we're all sick of this narrative that we don't have any fans. The Chargers don't have any fans. And so this is, it's not going to be the year to be like, hey, like we're 100% sold out at SoFi Stadium. I don't think that's ever going to be the case just because of it's in California, it's in Los Angeles, but show up to the Cowboy game, show up to the Steelers game, show up for the Raiders game, and then we can kind of begin to at least quiet that narrative going forward.
I will say, winning is kind of contagious. Like even at SoFi Stadium, that 12-4 season, like, they did start to catch fire kind of late. And that Ravens game, which a lot of people expected to be, oh, the Ravens are going to take over the stadium, was mostly Chargers fans, right? So, you kind of have moments like that. The game didn't go too well, but they did beat them in the playoffs. You have moments like that where it's just like, hey, look, if they look like a 12-5 team by the end of the season, and they look like a team that can be competitive, I think they have a chance, to fill up some of these games. And it's better for them if they do get off to a good start that say, the Chiefs and Steelers are down the road.
I'm just hoping Chargers fans can afford to go to these games. I'm hearing ticket prices north of $500 a seat. I don't know where people are picking from, but if you're paying $500 a seat, you're paying a lot more than I paid for my seats.
Yeah, and it could be a lot worse, right? That the Raiders opening Monday Night Football game against the Ravens, like it was like lowest available I saw was like $700. Like that's crazy. So the sweet irony of Raiders fans giving us so much shit for not having any fans, that they're going to experience the same kind of thing in Las Vegas. So I'm going to run down the entire list of the schedule, and then we're gonna kind of jump around some general takeaways, and then we'll also kind of go game by game and give our thoughts about each week. So the Chargers obviously open on the road against Washington, week 2 at home against Dallas, week 3 at Kansas City, which will be great not to have a winter game in Kansas City for once. At home against the Raiders on Monday Night Football, at home against the Browns, at Baltimore. Week 7 is the bye. Week 8 on Halloween at home against the Patriots. Week 9 at Alex's Eagles, which would be fun for him. Week 10 at home against the Vikings. Week 11 home against the Steelers on Sunday Night Football. Week 12 at the Denver Broncos. Week 13 at Cincinnati. Week 14 home against the New York Giants and the turnover machine. Week 15 home against the Chiefs on Thursday Night Football. Week 16 at Houston. Who knows what the hell is going to be going on there. Week 17 home against the Broncos. And then week 18, the season finale at the Las Vegas Raiders. So the one thing in terms of primetime TV, week 18 is kind of being left open from all the NFL networks. And that's not going to be the case for the Chargers. I'd be pretty surprised if they put Chargers Raiders on primetime TV. So just wanted to point that out. So Tyler, what's your main takeaway looking at this schedule 1 to 18?
that we are really in for a ride for the first half of the season because it's going to be tough for this team. I think I think some games are winnable. Like I could convince you that they would beat the Washington football team week 1. But that's going to be really tough. Dallas is going to be tough. Obviously, Kansas City, Vegas is whatever, but then the Browns are really good. Baltimore, the Chargers stopping the run this year, the bye week, and then they have New England, a team that they can never beat. I mean, this season might be look really, really rough until week 12, honestly. So as far as the season goes, like it's going to be a rough start for them for sure. If it's anything other than a rough start for the first 12 weeks, that's a win for a first year head coach.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's some tough games kind of in that schedule. The first thing that kind of jumped out at me is that Brandon Staley gets really thrown into the fire here in terms of his coaching matchups. He gets to go against Ron Rivera week 1, then Mike McCarthy, then Andy Reid, John Gruden, then a game against Stefanski, then Harbaugh, then Belichick. Like, so he's getting thrown really into the ringer, and that's kind of a cause for a little bit of concern. I think in terms of, how the schedule plays out for rookie head coach, right? We saw Anthony Lynn kind of start slow that first year and then, picked it up with the 9-3 finish in 2017, which, that may be what happens here. Obviously, we hope they don't start 0-4. But yeah, it's a rough start. But the back half of the schedule is a little bit better where they get teams like the Bengals and the Giants and the Texans. Interestingly, they do have the same kind of stretch they had last year with Chiefs, Broncos, and Raiders all at the end of the year, which is the second time. Yeah, it's kind of weird, but they just cram those games in. And the last thing, that kind of jumped out initially when I looked at it is the week 7 bye, because the Chargers for a while have had that late season bye, week 11, week 12. Obviously last year because of COVID, it got switched to week 6 because, I don't even remember what it was, the Broncos Patriots COVID situation. I think that's what caused it. But, so them having a similar bye to what they had last year as opposed to the late bye they normally have is kind of interesting to me.
It is interesting. I think that's kind of a tough situation because you get your first 6 games and then you have to play the last 11 all in a row, which I know, they don't necessarily have like the toughest schedule to end the season as opposed to the start, but that is interesting. So I'm glad that, Tyler, you kind of brought up the first year coaches, because I think, there's been so much talk this year about, the Chargers are a dark horse Super Bowl candidate. Like, there's always an off-season hype train for the Chargers, right? Like, this is nothing new, but it feels different this year. It feels like people are legitimately buying in, and it doesn't come with the caveat of like, well, it always happens. But so I went through and looked at the last 10 years and kind of ran down for LAFB, through the what the history tells us of first-year head coaches and what we can kind of expect. So in the last 10 years, there's been 45 new first-year head coaches. I'm not counting, obviously a guy like Doug Marrone, who was hired twice, Bruce Arians was hired twice, that kind of thing. Talking only first-time head coaches. So the Chargers obviously familiar with the situation with Mike McCoy, who was a first-time head coach, and Anthony Lynn, and now Brandon Staley. So of the 45 first-year head coaches, only 12 made the playoffs in their first year, including Ben McAdoo, surprisingly, Adam Gase, and Mike McCoy. So just kind of funny looking. It is disgusting. Just kind of looking at how everything ran down. It was so funny, looking at what history has told us. Like Doug Peterson had the worst record of his cycle in his first season. He went 7-9, and then the following year went 13-3, won the Super Bowl. The following year, I think they made it to the conference championship game again, right, Alex? Obviously, that tenure ended in flames, but it's just kind of funny, looking at these first-year head coaches, and you look at a guy like Doug Peterson, who ended up being the most successful of the group, and he had the worst record in year 1. So that's my way of saying, don't expect this to be firing on all cylinders from day one. This is gonna take time. The Chargers can absolutely win a lot of games. They definitely have the talent, but history has told us that it is very difficult for first-year head coaches to really come in and hit things in stride. I will say that, recently it's been a little bit more easier, I guess you could say, for first year head coach to make the playoffs. Of the last 22 in the last 5 years, 8 have made the playoffs. So it's improving. It's getting a little easier, but I just be a little cautious on the hype train. I had people telling me that the Chargers could go 14-3 today in my mentions. Like, ease up a little bit, give Brandon Staley some slack. It takes time to build up, a high level program. It's not going to be firing on all cylinders from day one.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's kind of funny. There's 17 games this year, but every year I would look at the schedule and be like, "Oh, this looks like 10-6," and then they never go 10-6. So there's that. But this schedule to me, I mean, we'll get to record predictions later, but it is kind of a murderer's row those first couple weeks, and then it gets a little bit easier. So yeah, I definitely see the kind of same concerns with Staley, and like I mentioned, just like the coaching matchups that he has to go through as a first-time head coach in those first 6-7 weeks is a little rough. And then down the stretch he gets some more kind of rookie head coaches, but yeah, not too great there for him. But yeah, I think it's all about patience, and yeah, I don't think they're going to be the team everybody wants them to be week one. But I do think at some point they will kind of round into form.
If I'm going to have some faith in a coach, I do have some faith in Staley, just because he was able to take, even just as a year one defensive coordinator, which is very different. He did do a great job with the Rams, who, the Rams came off of their bye and held Seattle and Tampa Bay to 16 and 24 points. They only allowed 19 points per game before the bye. They only allowed 18 points per game after the bye. So he is a guy who can come in and instill some change. Whether he can do that for an entire team and fix everything, including special teams, and also somehow figure out the injury issue, who's to know? As I get older and wiser as a Chargers fan, I start to temper my expectations just a little bit. Last year I had them going 10-6 because I look at every game on the schedule and think, will this healthy team beat that healthy team? But now I have to start accounting for the injuries that are inevitable, because I know that at some point during the preseason, we're going to be doing the math in our heads about how many games, Derwin James is going to be out and whether he can return for week 8 versus the Patriots. It's inevitable. We've done it the last 2 seasons. It's probably going to happen with some player this year, and that's unfortunate. But the injuries happen, and so I need to learn how to temper my expectations just a little bit. But either way, no matter what happens year one, for me, what matters the most is what happens in year 3, because the Chargers seem to always have, well, not always, but with McCoy and Lynn, they have 2 good years. They make the playoffs at least one of those years and win a game in one of those 2 years. And then year 3, it tanks off. So even if the Chargers do really well this year, based off of a roster that they're kind of trying to overturn anyway, like, show me who you are in year 3. So, for me, this is all just great. Show me development, show me a good line, show me Herbert developing, show me, communication, analytics driven, offense, whatever. I'm still waiting for year 3. Like, this is a great year. It's all fun. I'm going to enjoy being there at SoFi with everybody. But, I'm honestly waiting for year 3.
Yeah, I think, if you're looking at this as kind of a developmental year, like in college, it's obviously a little different, right? But, some years you're going to have a college football team, unless you're Alabama or Clemson, that is just, a young team that is going to have some growing pains. And you obviously have to temper expectations a little bit. And if you're lucky, that team could have the talent to certainly, reach their ceiling. And the Chargers can certainly do that, right? Like, if the Chargers offensive line is able to, gel relatively quickly and they protect Justin Herbert, and the offense is more efficient, particularly in the red zone, which is certainly possible, then yeah, they can be one of those cases that they strike lightning in a bottle and they do make the playoffs in year 1. Sorry about that. So it is possible. It's just, I don't know how likely it is. And this, you talk about the coaching staff being thrown in the fire. The offensive line is being thrown to the fire too. You have Washington right on that. You get to play Cleveland in the first couple of weeks with Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. You get to play Baltimore, who's going to blitz them 37 times out of 50. Like, it's going to be a tough few weeks for the offensive line. And, if Brian Bulaga gets hurt, then it's going to get a little bit harder. So it's going to take some time. If they develop and things are improving throughout the season, then the Chargers can still have a great season and not win 12, 13 games. It's just all about, tempering those expectations and realizing who the Chargers are is a team that needs to keep developing, like Tyler was saying.
I will say, like, if Brandon Staley does do something as significant as, fix second half defense, right? Like that definitely would have helped last year, right? And then 100%. You can kind of talk yourself into they were 7-19, maybe they would have been at 10-16. But this year, I definitely think they have a harder schedule. So I think keeping, expectations in check, and just the reality of those first 6, 7, 8 weeks, it definitely is kind of necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go game by game here. Obviously, the Chargers open at Washington. We kind of talked about it a little bit. The thing about Washington, on paper, they seem to have improved their roster. They get Ryan Fitzpatrick instead of, they started 6 quarterbacks last year, which was just a mess. They still won the division, made the playoffs. Granted, it is the NFC least, but they still won the division. They still made the playoffs. And, they should be better on paper, at least on offense. Defensively, I think they're going to have the defensive rookie of the year in Jamin Davis. They've got Chase Young. They've got Deron Payne. They've got all these guys that bring over, I forget his name, the cornerback from Cincinnati, that will be a fun matchup with
William Jackson.
Allen. William Jackson, thank you. So there are definitely ways to look at Washington as not a great team, but I think on paper they have made enough improvements where I could look at them, in my opinion, as the clear favorite to win the NFC East again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of looking at my phone right now, and I saw the Chargers open as a 2-point favorite in that game, which means they would be a 5-point favorite on a neutral field. And I was like, I don't know about that. I think Washington is a really good defense. The Fitzpatrick thing, like, he does bring some stability, and we've seen plenty of runs where Fitzpatrick plays like an MVP the first 4 weeks, and then tails off. So that concerns me a little bit. But the Chargers do have Justin Herbert, and, they have won against Washington before, most recently a couple of years ago with that 30-13 game. But yeah, I think it's a interesting matchup. I don't think it's like a really hard game or really easy game. It's just an interesting road matchup.
Yeah, the whole Fitzpatrick thing is a real downer. I was trying to think of who their quarterback was. I'm like, well, the Chargers will probably have a quarterback advantage. And I think they will. I think Herbert is a better quarterback than Fitzpatrick, except for the fact that Fitzpatrick can somehow throw out 400 yards because he feels like it. But I will say that Denver last year with Fangio and, of course, Ronaldo Hill, they played Fitzpatrick just in the second half of that Miami game, and they held him to 0 TDs, 1 interception, and a QBR of 30.4. And then the last time the Rams played the Washington football team, they demolished them 30-10. So I do think there are people on this coaching staff who can make this work. I just think, I don't know, like week 1 against that good defense, this is a real toss-up for me. I don't know. Do you want to call predictions yet? Because I will say that this is a loss.
Yeah, I like the thing with Ryan Fitzpatrick, is he a long-term upgrade? Obviously not. But the thing that he does better than most of the quarterbacks in the league is that he just chucks it up. He doesn't give a shit, and he's gonna throw 40 times a game and put it all on the line. He's very, gunslinger-esque. And do they have the skill set, the skill players to do that? I really like Terry McLaurin. They drafted De'Ami Brown, so I think they do. The key thing there is that the Chargers are going to be running a defense that is, going to be able to kind of stop the downfield plays. That's kind of the calling card of the Vic Fangio defense. So I think this is a toss-up. I don't necessarily think the Chargers should be favored, but -2, I think on either side would feel about right to me. But right now, I just be given the defensive line, offensive line advantage for Washington. I think I'm going to chalk this up as a loss as well.
Yeah, and just like we've been saying, I mean, a brand new offensive line playing that defensive line week 1, like it's going to take time for it to gel, even though I do think it'll be a dramatic upgrade over what we got last year. But I will also say L week 1.
So the home opener against the Dallas Cowboys, obviously Dak Prescott is back. That is kind of the biggest thing that will elevate the Cowboys because they had to deal with Andy Dalton, kind of lowering their ceiling and making them, unwatchable last year. On defense, they're switching to the Seattle cover 3. At least that's what I have seen to be the case. as they brought over Dan Quinn to be the defensive coordinator. And they have a very, very young defense. You know, Tyler mentioned Micah Parsons, Jabril Cox, and Kelvin Joseph, the corner from Kentucky. They've got a rebuilding defense, and they've got to be able to figure out how they fit Dan Quinn's image. So, you know, if there is one game that probably is like a 38-35 game, I think it might be the home opener for the Cowboys. But I do think the Chargers will have enough on defense to slow the Cowboys down and get a W to open the season at SoFi.
Yeah, I'll also say W for this one, just because I think the Chargers have the offensive firepower to match it, and I think their defense at this point is still better. And that's kind of a rough 2-week stretch for the Cowboys, because they open at Tampa and then go to play the Chargers, which that's not an easy 2-game stretch in terms of the offenses you're playing with a defense that is still so young and obviously has a new defensive coordinator and all that. So yeah, I'll say W for that one.
I'll ditto you guys and say a W as well.
Sounds good. So right now we're looking at 1-1 apparently. So week 3, the Chargers are at the Kansas City Chiefs. Very similar situation on the offensive line, obviously rebuilding their unit on the fly, getting Orlando Brown via trade, drafting Creed Humphrey, and doing some other things like adding Kyle Long. They'll get the Canadian doctor, what's his name?
Laurent Duvernay-Tardif.
Thank you.
Good
so
call.
they'll have 4 new starters out of 5 most likely. You know, right tackle is going to be Mike Remmers or Lucas Niang. So they're rebuilding their offensive line. Obviously, you got Pat Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill. So Alex, what's kind of your thought process here, week 3 at Kansas City, where the Chargers have had some recent success? Obviously, last year was against all the backups, but you know, it is what it is.
I don't know. This is the first tough one for me to call, just because I do think they have played Kansas City really well. Obviously, this is Justin Herbert's first real game against Kansas City. Considering, I mean, he did have his first start, but that was kind of being thrown into the fire in an emergency type of way. This time he'll have obviously everything in the playbook available to him. And so I do think that'll help him with all the preparation. So I don't know. I think that's kind of a relatively even game. It is in Kansas City, which is kind of the tough part. I kind of lean L, but I could also I could see this being a win. I mean, the Chargers most recently have won in Kansas City in the Mike Williams game. I don't think it's impossible, and obviously, like we mentioned, like it won't be terribly cold there. Getting them this early in Kansas City in September, but that could definitely be an offensive shootout type game with Mahomes and Herbert.
For sure.
I just think the Chargers are really going to miss, well, Casey Hayward too, but really Melvin Ingram. I don't think, we've appreciated him enough. Maybe we did. I don't know how good Melvin Ingram was the last 2 matchups that he played versus the Chiefs, single-handedly almost wrecking them. And what was the Mexico City game, their second game versus Kansas City?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Or their third or their first?
Second.
Whatever. Point is, Melvin Ingram is really good against the Chiefs, or has been really good against the Chiefs, and they're going to miss him as well as Casey Hayward. So, this is a toss-up. If they win a game, I would always, for some reason, just because they beat them in Kansas City in 2018, they can just do it again. But I always would lean towards the home team winning in a close game, and Kansas City is the home team. So I'm going to say that they lose this game. Could be close, should be a good game. Mitchell Schwartz is certainly worried about this Herbert kid, but I think they're going to lose.
I think that was actually, that was the first game, right?
Yeah.
At the Mexico City. Yeah, no, never mind.
Oh, that's right, because then they ended in Kansas City. That's when Rivers gave his goodbye speech, essentially. I think I'm leaning towards a win here. I think the Chiefs have kind of started slow in the last couple of years, and they've kind of taken on that whole we'll win when it matters kind of mantra. Obviously, we'll see how they'll react to losing the Super Bowl as opposed to winning it. But I think I'm leaning towards a W here. I think the Chargers do have, again, the defensive scheme to be able to kind of slow down the Chiefs. And knock on wood, I hope everybody is at least kind of healthy then. So I'm leaning towards a W in week 3. So week 4, home against the Raiders on Monday Night Football. Again, please go to this game. And if you cannot, sell your tickets to a Chargers fan. Please do not sell it to a Raiders fan. So the Raiders are an interesting case, right? Because we all know they get Gus Bradley, they get Casey Hayward. They drafted 3 safeties. They reached for Alex Leatherwood. So I don't know how much the Raiders have improved. Like, I really don't look at them as, obviously, I think Casey Hayward will be a stabilizing force in the secondary, and I think Trayvon Merrick will be a better free safety than who they had, which was Eric Harris. So I think they upgraded 2 spots. I think they downgraded their offensive line in a big way. I don't trust their pass rush. So to me, on paper, I think this is another win for the Chargers.
I think this is a win, but I kind of have a little asterisk. I do think the Raiders can start hot. They have started hot the last couple of years and then tailed off
That's true.
towards the end of the season with injuries and their coach not being a good coach. But yeah, I do think this is a close game just because it is going to be Monday night kind of Raiders Chargers at home. I don't know. I'll say win. I'm not leaning a particular direction, but yeah.
Yeah, this has to be a win because I got to go with a fan who's freaking obnoxious as hell at these games. My dad is so no, I'm kidding. I love going with him to these games. It's just awkward when I lose, or it's awkward no matter who wins because the other person has to sit there just kind of like all sad on the whole drive. The strength of the Raiders was always not always, but recently their offensive line, and Josh Jacobs ran rampant on them, and so did Booker, I believe. And so for them to downgrade their offensive line, I think, I'm not sure Leatherwood puts it together by week 4. And yeah, they have an improved secondary on paper, but I think it's still going to take time. And at the end of the day, they have the ultimate adjuster in Brandon Staley and the ultimate non-adjuster in Gus Bradley. And I think Staley is going to come out on top. I know it's not a defense versus defense battle, but overall, the Raiders just didn't they're kind of the Raiders. But then again, they went to New Orleans, I think, and beat the Saints on Monday Night Football last year. So anything could happen, but I do think this is a win inevitably.
Yeah, the Raiders obviously have started hot and fizzled out, like Alex was saying. I don't look at the Raiders as making any legitimate upgrades outside of Merrick over Eric Harris because you're switching to a cover 3 scheme and they don't have any linebackers that can cover unless you put Divine Diablo as a linebacker. I don't know if that's their plan, but they don't have a pass rush. I know they have Yannick Ngakoue, so I'm not super worried about that game in terms of the offensive line. And then the offensive line, I don't think is going to be able to give the Chargers defense enough problems. So to me, like I said, I think this is a win. I just look at the Raiders. I don't know where the upgrades came. Maybe defensive coordinator, I guess, but that's going to take a while. They've have a ton of young players who are going to have to learn how to play this cover 3 scheme as opposed to whatever they were trying to run before that. So week 5, home against the Cleveland Browns. To me, this is one of the games that I'm most sure is going to be a loss, which is so weird looking at the Browns as this great team. But, I look at the upgrades they've made on defense, adding Jadeveon Clowney, John Johnson, Troy Hill, Greg Newsome, and they got Alex's guy, Anthony Schwartz, to kind of open things up on offense. So this is one of the games I'm most confident in saying that the Chargers are going to lose, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. I think this game could go either way, but to me, this is kind of 2 and 3 for the Chargers. I think, look, if you get out of this first 6-game stretch 3-3, that's kind of a win with the schedule that they have, which is maybe what I'll predict them to do. I'll think about the Ravens game a little bit more. But yeah, I think, again, offensive line coming together, a little tough.
Yeah, the Browns are just on paper, a complete team. I mean, they've now committed to their defense. They have last year committed to their offensive line. And this would be a huge win for the Chargers. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think the Browns are pretty much just pushing for that championship at this point, whereas the Chargers maybe could beat them next year, but it's a little too early for them. And this Chargers roster is still trying to change, and not get rid of, but some of those Lynn, guys. The last time they played where they beat down the Browns. So their number 1 receiver, rusher, top 3 tacklers, 2 leading sack guys, and their leading pass defender, they're all gone. They're all gone from that game. So the Chargers are kind of still trying to figure out who they are, and build themselves as a team. Whereas the Browns, they're just all in at this point. I just think the momentum that the Browns should have, unless for some reason last year was a fluke for Stefanski and Baker Mayfield. If for some reason that was a complete fluke and they're not as good, then Herbert could have that quarterback edge, if you will, and maybe beat them. But it's tough. Luckily, they are at home, so that does give them a shot. But this team, I think this is one of the 2 or 3 toughest teams they're going to play all year.
Absolutely agree there. So the next team is definitely not any easier. Week 6 at Baltimore. You get another, West Coast to East Coast trip. I'm not too sure if that's an early kickoff. I kind of assume it is. But the Ravens are kind of rebuilding their defense. They lost both of their edge rushers and Yannick Ngakoue and Matthew Judon. They've got, to replace a couple secondary pieces as well. They're replacing Orlando Brown on offense. They never really replaced I'm so bad with names today. Marshall Yanda. There we go.
Oh.
So, but then again, they also drafted Rashad Bateman and Tylan Wallace. So their receiving core should definitely be upgraded. Their offense should be improved. If Greg Roman can simply be an average play caller, their offense should fire on all cylinders again. So, Tyler, what are your thoughts here? Week 6 at Baltimore.
Oh boy. So because they're on the road, I'll probably call this one a loss for the Chargers. But I mean, I'm still very excited to watch this game.
Yeah.
You have Bosa versus Stanley. Like I know Murray and Queen aren't playing each other, but they were the linebacker 1, linebacker 2 of the previous draft. And so that's going to be fun. And of course, Jackson and Herbert, not that they're polar opposites, but you have one guy who's, more of a win with his legs kind of guy. And Herbert's obviously kind of a more win with his arm kind of guy. So it'll be a fun game to watch, but I just think this one's also a loss. Again, if the Chargers can show me that they can stop the run, I'm all for it. But I don't know if they have the edge players or even the interior players. And we'll see about the health of their linebackers at this point. I just don't know if they can stop a run-heavy offense that also now has some weapons on offense.
Yeah, I feel the same way about the Ravens game. I think this could be one of those that the Chargers inexplicably, find a way to win on an East Coast road trip. I mean, they haven't struggled with East Coast road trips too hard. I think the Ravens are just really a really great running team. You have Lamar Jackson, and he finally has some receivers that are worth a damn. So I think that's a good matchup on paper and close game, but I'll lean towards the Ravens. So I think that means heading into week 7, and me and Tyler are at 2-4. Steven is at 3-3.
Well, I didn't say that they were going to beat the Ravens yet.
Oh, no. Well, do you think they were win or loss?
I think they're going to lose. So does that put me at 3-3? I haven't been keeping
track. Yeah.
So I said
you would still be
a loss against Washington, win against Dallas, win against Chiefs, win against Raiders, loss. Oh yeah, 3-3.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is going to be a tough game for them. And I said the other day about Brendan Hymus, the Chargers have added a lot of highly intelligent offensive linemen, but the blitzing scheme of the Raiders is so difficult to prepare for, and it's going to be a short week because they're going to have to travel. So. I think that's going to be a tough matchup for them. So obviously week 7 bye. Week 8, they get the revenge game, hopefully against the Patriots on Halloween. Should be a very, very entertaining game. Staley, kind of the young defensive genius. Bill Belichick, the very old defensive genius. Tyler or Alex, we'll start with you on this one. What are your thoughts here against the Patriots?
I think it'll be kind of a relatively close game, maybe low scoring. The question with the Patriots is Mac Jones in by this time? Is it still Cam Newton? That to me is kind of what leads this to be a little bit uncertain for them, as opposed to last year where they kind of knew Cam Newton was the starter every game. So that's an interesting element. They have obviously gained a lot of, skill position players, including Hunter Henry. Who maybe this is a Hunter Henry revenge game. Hopefully not. But I'll say win here. I just don't feel like the quarterback thing is solved for the Patriots yet. And I think the Chargers, they've taken 2 straight losses in my theoretical reality against the Browns and the Ravens. I think they get a good bounce back game here. Still a lot up in the air with the Patriots, and I don't totally trust their kind of receiving core where Nelson Aguilar is the best wide receiver they have. But I will say win for the Chargers.
Yeah, Nelson Aguilar torched the Chargers last year, though, so I'm not sure how I feel about that.
That's true.
Like I said earlier, the Rams come off their bye last season and held Seattle into Tampa Bay to 40 combined points, which is pretty solid.
Yeah.
I like this is to me is the game of the season to tell me about Brandon Staley. The matchup here
I
is
agree.
Staley versus Belichick. It's not quite obviously working like that, but you need like if you want to show me that you are a legit head coach, if they go out and beat the Patriots. Now, granted, this isn't exactly the same Patriots team of old. I'm not really sure Cam or Mac Jones are really going to elevate this team, but it's the Patriots. But, if they are to win this game, they're going to have to show that they're an elevated team at every level that they were weak at last year. Punt coverage, kickoff coverage, field goals, pass blocking, turnovers. And so if they come out with a win, I mean, wow, what a great turnaround for this franchise, I think, because they've had such a hard time beating the Patriots. But until they beat the Patriots, until they beat Belichick, I'm going to call this a loss because they just don't like last season was supposed to be the revenge game for the playoff game and they got absolutely whooped. So like, I'm not really sure how revenge is going to go this time around. So yeah, I think this is a loss.
I think it's going to be a very competitive game, but again, like I'm with Tyler here. I will never predict a win against the Patriots. I just can't. Like even if we're looking, obviously our predictions can change. Like if we get to this game and the Chargers are 4-2 and the Patriots are 2-4 or something like that, I'm probably still going to predict a loss. Like I'm never going to predict a win against the Patriots. Like it's just not going to happen. On paper, the Patriots do seem to have upgraded most of their positions of need. They get the 2 tight ends, which I think is going to be fascinating to watch as a general football fan. They'll get Dante Hightower back. Kyle Van Noy is back with them after weirdly being cut by the Dolphins. So the Patriots should be better. They should be a much improved team. Granted they whooped the Chargers, but in general, the Patriots look like they're, if Cam Newton or Mac Jones, whoever they start, can, be a little bit better than what Cam was last year, then they should be able to challenge for a playoff spot. So again, I think that's a loss there. All right, week 9 at the Philadelphia Eagles. Alex is conflicted, hold his pillow kind of game. Alex, are you gonna be able to attend this game?
No, probably not. I'll actually be in another country for medical school. So I'm probably not going to be at this game. Maybe things can change and I'll take a trip there. But I'm currently saving for Sixers playoff tickets, so I don't think I'll be able to afford this game.
Why would you waste your money like that?
Well, I'm a masochist of all things. So, this is going to be an interesting one. I don't know what the Eagles are going to be this year. I think they'll be kind of bad, but Jalen Hurts takes another step, and obviously they got Devonta Smith in the draft. That could be kind of a team that is maybe one of those shocking 9-8 teams, as opposed to 9-7. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what I'll say it's a win for now for the Chargers, just because there's a lot of uncertainty. But again, it is a kind of an East Coast road trip. I would say win, but I kind of don't know what the Eagles are going to be. I still don't really have a good read on that.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. The Chargers need to win this game because I gave Sirianni a lot of shit for his opening presser where he was all we're going to have systems and we're going to make them simple. I love what Philly did with the draft. Watching that with Alex was pretty fun and getting Smith. Then they get Dickerson. Then they just load up on defensive line with Milton Williams, Tuipulotu, and Teron Jackson. So, I mean, that's a pretty good defensive line. They already had a defensive line that I remember. I'm sorry, Alex, I don't follow the Eagles all that much. But I still think this is a win. Like the Eagles, I think, are still the worst team of the two. And so I just think at this point, talent wins out and the Chargers do take this one.
Yeah, I agree there. And I think as much as I'm rooting for Jalen Hurts, the person, like I just don't know how much I buy him as an NFL quarterback. And so until I see what, year 2 of Jalen Hurts looks like, I'm going to say this is a win as well. All right, week 10 at home against the Minnesota Vikings. They get to play Kirk Cousins, who, got a lot of shade thrown his way this week by Justin Jefferson. That'll be a little bit of fun seeing, Justin Jefferson versus Justin Herbert kind of dynamic. And so I think this is going to be a really interesting game. But I think the Chargers are going to be able to win this one as well. I think the Vikings defense is still in a little bit of a transition period. They brought Mackenzie Alexander back. They signed Patrick Peterson. So they don't really have enough on defense for me to be like super worried about the Vikings defense from 2019 that whooped the Chargers, because most of that team is gone or older. There's the whole Danielle Hunter who's coming back from injury thing, contract dispute. So I'm not super worried about the Vikings defense. I'm certainly worried about Dalvin Cook if he's healthy against the Chargers run defense, and Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. That'll be a lot of fun watching them go up against the secondary. But I think the Chargers offense will have enough to get a win here against the Vikings in week 10.
I'll throw a little firecracker in here. We sure Kirk Cousins is going to be the starting quarterback? Because I don't know. I feel like that's one that could go to Kellen Mond. Kellen Mond. I mean, he's there.
I don't think Kellen Mond is ready for a year one starter, man. I think that's a long-term thing.
I don't think he is, but I mean, you have Kirk Cousins' teammates publicly trashing him. I mean, it's not a great situation, and like Kirk Cousins is kind of the definition of quarterback purgatory. Like I kind of just wouldn't be surprised if that's a little bit of a, this year's version of Wentz hurts a little bit, where, you have Kirk, he struggles a little bit, or, he's kind of in the middle. And maybe the Vikings start to slide and they put Mond in there. I wouldn't predict it to happen, but I really wouldn't be surprised by it at this point. But yeah, I don't know what the Vikings are this year either. I mean, they do have some offensive and defensive talent, not quite as much defensive talent as they had, I think, in previous years. But yeah, I'll say win for the Chargers. So I think I have them at 5-4 at this point, and that feels fair. But yeah, so I think there's a lot of interesting things about this matchup. Just it is the extra home game. Hopefully the fans show up, like we've kind of been saying with the other games. But yeah, I would say win, but of course, they could get burnt by Justin Jefferson for 200 yards, and we have to talk about it on the podcast.
As long as Herbert throws for more than 200 and looks like the better rookie of the year candidate, that's fine. I watched enough Vikings games with my brother-in-law to know that the Vikings they flop. Like, they have stupid games. They're situationally not a good team. I believe they totally botched that game against Seattle last year. I can't remember what the situation was, but they totally botched it. So they can be had. I don't know if the Chargers have the personnel to keep up, but I think like the Chargers get him at home. And so I'll give them a win on this one. It'll be really close, but I do think the Chargers have just enough, and the Vikings kind of can flop enough when they're not like they're a team that just kind of underperforms anyway. So I'll give this one to the Chargers as well.
Yeah. So getting back to Alex's point about Kirk Cousins versus Kellen Mond, the Vikings schedule is the opposite of the Chargers. So the Vikings schedule is very difficult down the stretch, but they open with the Bengals, Cardinals, Seahawks, Cleveland, Detroit, Carolina. And then they have the bye week, and then Dallas, Baltimore, Chargers. So it could happen. I could see them benching Kirk Cousins after the Chargers. But man, their final few games here at San Francisco, at Detroit, Pittsburgh, at Chicago, home against the Rams, at Green Bay, home against the Bears. So that's a tough way to say, all right, rookie, here you go. So I just don't know. Like, as a prospect, I didn't like Kellen Mond enough to say like, yeah, he's a year one starter. But if they are at the point where they are, having a losing season, which is certainly possible, then I could see Mond coming in eventually, but I don't think he'll be there against the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, you just read me that schedule, and I changed my mind. Kirk Cousins, Vikings fans, you get to enjoy one more season of Kirk Cousins.
And I think they can cut him in the off season and save a bunch of money. So I think next year is probably the Kellen Mond year. But again, if Kirk Cousins is decent again and they're 8-9, 9-8, then they'll probably talk themselves into another year of Kirk Cousins. All right, next one. This is another tough game for the Chargers. Home against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday Night Football. Going to be a huge game, and hopefully get some revenge. Again, kind of the theme for the Duck Hodges game. The Steelers, obviously, they lost Bud Dupree in the offseason. Big Ben, who knows how he's going to be playing this year. They bring back Juju Smith-Schuster. Had one of the worst drafts of anyone in the league, in my opinion, drafting a running back and a tight end when they had an atrocious offensive line last year. So, Tyler, what are your thoughts here for the Pittsburgh Steelers in Week 11 on Sunday Night Football?
Well, that's just it. Like, first of all, I hate that this is at home and I have to freaking show up to this and it's going to suck. But, if they come out with a win, all's good. Fortunately, like you mentioned, the Steelers went running back and tight end in the draft instead of replacing, I don't know, Filer, Villanueva, Pouncey, all these guys and let Creed Humphrey go to the Chiefs.
I know, you bastards.
So, and also losing Dupree. And so I think this Steelers team, they could have beat the Chargers this year with a good draft. Instead, they went in a different direction. And sure, like Najee Harris will be a problem for the Chargers for sure.
Yeah.
But they didn't go with offensive line and they lost a pass rusher. So yeah, I'll give the Chargers a win for this one and hopefully finally get that home primetime win they've been missing against the Steelers.
I'll give the Chargers the win too. I think this is kind of a interesting game. Really depends where Pittsburgh is in this point in the year. I think week 11 is actually the first week they can flex. So you never know. I don't think that game will be flexed. I don't think Pittsburgh will be that bad. But you never know. Big Ben is kind of going downhill. And it wouldn't be surprised me if that catches up with them sooner rather than later, but they're never usually worse than 8-8. So I guess we'll just kind of function off of that. But yeah, they do have Juju Smith-Schuster still as a weapon. Najee Harris behind kind of a bad offensive line. But we also have seen that the Chargers haven't defended the run game well. So, even if he's behind a bad line, Najee Harris having his first breakout rookie game wouldn't shock me here, just because of how bad the Chargers run defense has been. So I'll chalk it up as a win. So I think at this point I'm at 6-4, something like that. But yeah, I think this is a very winnable game compared to Steelers teams from previous years. I don't feel totally confident about it because, again, we can't really count for the factor of, how many Steelers fans are going to be in the building. And does that give them, the advantage they had last time where they're playing Renegade in the stadium? God, I hate that whole corny city. But yeah, I hope the Chargers win that one for sure.
Yeah, I look at the Steelers in a very similar way to how I look at the Raiders. I don't know, outside of going from James Conner to Najee Harris, where did they upgrade this offseason? I really liked Kendrick Green as a prospect, but, going from Marquise Pouncey to Kendrick Green is a big drop-off. I don't even know. I know Zach Banner is going to start one of the tackle spots, but is he that much better than Matt Filer or Alejandro Villanueva? I don't really know. And so, this idea that they had that they could solve their offensive line issues by drafting a running back, that makes no damn sense. Like really think about that kind of concept. That would have been like the Chargers looking at their offensive line this year and be like, all right, Najee Harris at 13, let's do it. So I just don't look at them as being like, how much did they improve? I think losing Bud Dupree is huge, and they cut Steven Nelson after he was unhappy. So I'm not intimidated by this Steelers team. I think that they will be very solid. They won 8 games with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph. So I think that Steelers will be in the playoff contention. But I think the Chargers will be able to win this game as well. All right. So next game here, week 12. Let me pull this back up, make sure I say it right. They play at the Denver Broncos. Could have had Justin Fields, might get Aaron Rodgers. Who knows who their quarterback is at this point? The Chargers have always struggled at Denver. So, Tyler, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. They struggle at Denver. And even though Justin Herbert and the Chargers, they had their best offensive performance really possible for someone who has to travel to Denver. And the defense had a really good 3 quarters. And then they died. And they haven't won in Denver since, the 2018 game where really no team really cared that game. So if I'm not counting that as a legit game, they haven't won in Denver since 2013.
Ooh.
And the
Keenan Allen game.
Yeah, the Keenan Allen game. And I can't give them a win on this one. It's kind of like the Patriots where if you win in Denver this year, I'll believe you moving forward. But until you win in Denver, I'm not going to pick you to win in Denver, even though I will absolutely give them the win against the Broncos on paper, and I'll give them the win against the Broncos in their home game. But traveling to Denver is just kind of weird for the Chargers, and I'm going to give them a loss here, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Tyler. I think this is kind of a season split situation, so they'll probably win their home game, lose their road game. Obviously, I reserve the right to change that prediction if they actually do get Aaron Rodgers, which would be really terrible. But yeah, it's just really hard for the defense to play in Denver, as we've kind of seen the last couple of years, whether it's Bridgewater, whether it's Locke. This just feels like one of those L's you can pencil in. I wouldn't say I'm quite that pessimistic about it. Obviously, a very winnable game if it is Locke or Bridgewater, not Rodgers. But it's. I'm curious to see what their defense is like too. But I'll say L for now.
I mean, their defense is going to be very, very good, and that was the case before they drafted Patrick Surtain. So, going to be interesting there, obviously, to see who the quarterback is, and more interesting. Well, not more interesting, but also interesting to see who the running back is, because Javonte Williams is at this point, I think, a better option than Melvin Gordon. But that's just me. I hate Melvin Gordon. So I think they're going to lose this game too. Like Tyler said, until they win in Denver, I'm not going to predict it. Week 13 at Cincinnati, you get Burrow versus Herbert. A very, very winnable game. I think the Bengals, outside of their receiving group with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, I think their roster is pretty damn bad. So I'm going to give the Chargers a win here at Cincinnati. I'm not scared enough of Joe Burrow at this point in his career where I'm worried about the Chargers defense not being able to stop him. So to me, this is one of the easier games to pick. I think the Chargers will win this game kind of easily, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'll do the same thing I did with Kellermond, but for another reason. Are we sure Joe Burrow is going to be the quarterback because of injuries? Who knows? But yeah, I think
this drafted Penei Sewell, man.
Yeah, I'm not going to do Chase versus Sewell wars. I've earned the right to be past that. I think this is a win for the Chargers. So I'll have them at 7-5 at this point, and they start to enter this kind of easier stretch compared to what they had before. I think the Bengals, maybe I haven't seen their schedule and what it's like. I'd imagine since they're in the AFC North, it still is hard. But yeah, this should be a win. I think Burrow versus Herbert could have some fireworks, but the Bengals defense just don't think it's there yet.
Yeah, this Bengals team is still a bad team, and their strength was their receiving core, and they just added a receiver to that receiving core. It's a good wide receiver, absolutely, but their weakness is still the same weakness, and Burrow is going to be pressured 240 times before the Week 13 game, and it's going to be dreadful for him to now show up against, well, God willing, and hopefully they're healthy, Bosa and all these guys. I don't really like, this is the game where I feel it's a confident win. I just don't see it from Cincinnati, which absolutely means they're going to lose.
Yeah, we'll have to see about that. So Alex, to your question about their schedule, they open against the Vikings and then Bears, Steelers, Jaguars, Packers, Lions, Ravens, Jets, Browns, then a bye, then Raiders, Steelers, Chargers, Niners, Broncos, Ravens, Chiefs, Browns. So they might close the season on that might be an 8-game losing streak to close the season. Like, that is a brutal schedule for them.
Derek Stingley, welcome to Cincinnati.
Full on LSU reunion there. Absolutely. All right, week 14 for the Chargers at home against the turnover machine, Daniel Jones. We'll see. Apparently, that's kind of been a thing where he improved his turnovers at the end of the season. I don't really buy that. Obviously, they get Kenny Galladay. They added Dory Jackson. So they have made some good upgrades. I think this is definitely the prove-it year for Daniel Jones. Alex, do you think he will actually be able to prove it, though?
I think he could improve. I mean, he does have better weapons now with Kenny Galladay and Kadarius Toney in the fold. So I think they could improve. Their offensive line, I still think, is a little bit concerning because they lost Seidler and made some moves, but I don't know if they've really fixed their offensive line, which, if you're going to pressure Daniel Jones and then cause him to fumble, that's a problem still. But hopefully he has improved the turnovers for the Giants' sake. I don't know if I fully buy what they are on defense yet. I think they're a competent offense. I still don't know what I think of Joe Judge, really. I didn't think he was great last year when it came to situational football. So, but I also don't know what Staley is when it comes to situational football yet. Hopefully better than Lynn. So this is kind of a interesting game. I'll say Chargers win But yeah, could go either way.
I don't think it goes either way. I think they win this one. I just don't think the Giants are a very good team. I completely acknowledge that Barkley could run all over the defense, but Jones will inevitably turn the ball over. Steven, is there a reason you hate Daniel Jones like as much as like Zach
Yeah.
Wilson? I swear, you like every time you talk about him, it's like, oh, every week on Sundays, you're like, well, there's another fumble, oh, there's another interception, and like nobody else gets that treatment but Daniel Jones.
I don't know, man. It's just kind of funny, like this guy that the Giants, drafted 6 overall, and everybody thought that he was going to be like going in the 20s, and he just turns the ball over like so much. Like he's got like 37 career interceptions and like 25 fumbles. So I don't know. It's just funny. Maybe I'll ease up a little bit on Daniel Jones from here on out.
To be fair, with how that 2019 quarterback class has gone, I think Daniel Jones might still be QB2.
That is true. That is true. So Tyler, did you say if you thought that they were going to win?
Oh yeah, I think they're going to win.
Okay. I do too as well. I don't know how much I buy Joe Judge. I don't know how much their defense is going to be solid. I think adding Azeez Ojulari in the second round was a really good pick for them.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have Leonard Williams from the interior, and that's going to be, a prove-it game for the interior offensive line of the Chargers. Can they be able to stop a Dalvin Tomlinson and Leonard Williams? So interesting challenge there. All right, next one, Week 15 against the Chiefs on Thursday Night Football. I'm kind of in the opposite way here. I think they're going to be able to win at Kansas City and lose this game. This is traditionally when we see the Chiefs kind of ramp up everything and really get on a roll. Until we see that not happen, I'm going to expect that to continue to happen. So unfortunately, I think the Chargers will lose here on Thursday Night Football against the Chiefs.
Yeah, I sort of changed my mind on it. I think I initially said I thought that we're going to split it. I don't think they're going to split it anymore. I do think this is when the Chiefs get good. Obviously, This is a very similar week. I don't know if it's the exact same week. Probably not the Mike Williams game a few years ago. So maybe the Chargers get a little lucky, and it is at home for them, which is better. But yeah, I just think Andy Reid this late in the season, the Chiefs do figure stuff out. I think they can split, but as of now, I'll call it a loss.
Yeah, I'm going to call this one a loss too. I think at this point also, like realistically, the Chargers are too injured to keep up in this game. As long as Mahomes is healthy, I think they can win. And sure, yeah, Herbert, if he's healthy, like he did pretty well with limited weapons at the end of the season. But like, I just think this Chargers team, I'm not going to give them a win until they start winning against the Chiefs. And yeah, the 2018 game, I know that wasn't that long ago, but it kind of was now. It's 2021. And yeah, I'm just going to give them a loss here. And I do think they are going to get swept by the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think it's just such a tough thing to look at right now because the Chiefs are the class of the conference until proven otherwise. And, again, like I said, this is kind of where we see them ramp things up, and they're so good down the stretch of the season. All right, Week 16 at Houston. Another kind of situation where we don't really know who the hell is going to be quarterback at this point. Frankly, I'd be a little surprised if it's Deshaun Watson, whether or not his legal situation resolves itself. I think he's not going to be on the team. They're either going to trade him or he's not going to be on the team because of his legal issues. So at this point, it's probably going to be Davis Mills. I think the Texans are looking the number 1 overall pick square in the face for next year. That roster is really, really bad. Like Desmond King might be their best defensive player, which, I know people are kind of sick of me shitting on Desmond King, but that's not very good. So Alex, do you think this is one of those games that the Chargers should absolutely win and lose, or what do you think happens here?
I mean, I think that the Giants are kind of that game. That's kind of why I said that one could go either way. This one's not going either way. I can't. Yeah, this Texans roster is really bad than the traditional tanking rosters. I feel like, so that's why a lot of people are like, oh, will it be Deshaun Watson? Will it be Davis Mills? Will it be Tyrod Taylor? I don't really know if it matters just because that roster is so bad. And we saw a quarterback have a great a season as Deshaun Watson did last year, and they still went 4-12. So I don't know. I don't think this is could go either way one. I think the Chargers win this one pretty decisively. And then, like you said, the Texans are probably looking the number 1 pick right in the face. But yeah, I look, maybe the Chargers really do start to blow it and, somehow inexplicably lose this game. But like out of all the games on this schedule, this is the one where I'm like, they can't lose that one.
Yeah, it's not even just like maybe in a neutral field where we don't know what the records are. It's perhaps possible that the Houston Texans could pull it, but honestly, this Texans team wants to lose. Like I think they're going to want to lose, and they showed that when they drafted a quarterback with their first pick, and then moved up later in the draft for Nico Collins, I think, and it was just like, what are you doing? I would love more than anything for this to be a Tyrod Taylor revenge game. If he's still standing by week 16 with this Houston Texans team, he deserves an MVP at that point because that is a dreadful season to have with the team. But like this team sucks. This team is really bad. So this is the easiest win on the schedule. And even if it's close going into the fourth quarter, I think this Houston Texans team is just going to pull not Adam Gase, who's the defensive coordinator for the Jets, and just call like an all-out blitz and lose to the Raiders. Yeah, Greg Williams. I think they're just going to call it Greg Williams and blow this game at the very end, even if it's close.
Yeah, I don't see a world in which Houston wins more than 3 games this year. Like, Larry Tunsil's a really good left tackle, and Titus Howard is okay at right tackle. And obviously, if they have Deshaun Watson, he's a really good quarterback. That's about it. Like that is literally it on the roster, which made them trading up for Nico Collins and taking Davis Mills is weird. Like that's not typically how you see rebuilding teams handle a rebuild. Like they should have been trying to trade back, have some draft capital for next year, and you get the number 1 pick. You're not passing on a quarterback because you drafted Davis Mills in the 3rd round. Like, so it's a terrible roster, terrible draft. They're not losing that game to the Texans.
If you week 17 home against, if you could clone Laramie Tunsil and have him play all of the linebacker positions and the corner positions, it would be better than what they have right now.
It's a huge weed bill.
Put Laramie Tunsil at wide receiver, honestly. Week 17, home against the Broncos, the final home game of the season for the Chargers. I said before, I feel like they'll split against the Broncos. I just don't look at the Broncos offense unless they have Aaron Rodgers. That will definitely change things. But right now, I think this is going to be a win for the Chargers. They'll end the home season at SoFi on a high note.
Yeah, I think they'll also split this game, although we have seen games that the Chargers should beat the Broncos at home. The infamous Rivers, should have taken the sack a couple of years ago. That was, I think, at StubHub or whatever, Health, whatever it was called at that point. It was also that for a bit. But yeah, I said they split, and while I kind of reneged on my Chiefs split pick, I don't think the Broncos are quite that good. But obviously, like I said, there's a huge number 12 that looms in the distance potentially for that team. So that could change things. But as of now, I would call that a win.
I think the Chargers would split with the Broncos even if Rodgers was on the team. It depends on what they give up. If the Packers get nothing for Rodgers, then forget about it. The Broncos are going to the Super Bowl. But considering what they'd probably give up, I think the Chargers still could split.
Yeah, they could.
Same thing. I think they lose at Denver, and I think they win here.
Yeah, I mean, the Packers, like, I know there's, a lot of people have been shitting on their front office, but they're not stupid. Like, they're not going to give Rodgers away for free. Like, to me, it should start, in my opinion, with like 3 first-round picks and 2 legitimate starters. Mm-hmm. But if they get, 2 future first and, a Jerry Jeudy or that kind of player, maybe they get Patrick Surtain in the trade or something like that, then I think that would be a fair deal for both sides. But yeah, I think that does change things. Obviously, they have Rodgers, but we'll have to see how that pans out. All right, season finale, week 18 at the Raiders. They get to go play at the. I'm not going to call it the Death Star because that's stupid. At the DJ Roomba Las Vegas Stadium. Alex, what are your thoughts here about the season finale at the Raiders?
It's kind of a tough game to predict just because I don't know what the stakes will be at that point. Like, maybe perhaps the Chargers are still challenging for the division. Maybe the Raiders are challenging for a wild card or vice versa. But it also could be a game where the Raiders are a 4-12 team and the Chargers have nothing to play for, or also vice versa. Like, it's such a tough game to predict in that regard. And will it be flexed into an important spot in week 18 or no? I'll say that the Chargers win that game. I do think, even though they get swept by the Chiefs, split with the Broncos, I just don't think the Raiders are where they need to be kind of yet as a defensive team now. Gus Bradley does concern me a little, not because I think he'll be this great defensive coordinator, but he does know the Chargers pretty well, and has been able to limit AFC West teams in the past. So that does concern me kind of this deep in the season, but who knows what the Raiders roster will be at this point. Same with the Chargers. That's why it makes it hard to predict a week 18 game like this with what the stakes are. So I'll say Chargers win, and I think if I add everything up, I have them at 11-6, which was what I just said with I'll see them at 10-7, and in 4 months I'll think completely differently.
Yeah, sorry, Dad. I don't think that the Raiders are going to win either game. Could they? Sure. Should they? Nah. Like, I don't think. Like, I'm sure Gruden is fighting for his job at this point. I don't know how long, unless Mark Davis really just wants to give him the entire 10 years. But if I were like an actual owner, like, I would, not want a bunch of mediocrity for another season. So he probably has job security. But either way, I think the Raiders just lose this one. They're just not very good for the same reasons they lose the first one. They're going to lose this one. Did the Raiders have home field advantage? I guess, but like, whatever. Like, I don't think the team's that good. So I have finished at 10-7. I was 9-8 about halfway through the episode, but I did give them the win over the Vikings. So I am at 10-7 now. I'll be interested to see when more teams start seeding and getting into the playoffs. I'll see what 10-7 actually means. Like, usually if you go like 10-6, like, you're making the playoffs. That's a pretty good season. A little bit better than average for sure. 10-7, like, I don't really know what that looks like in terms of the playoff picture. So I think that's a good season. Obviously, it's you won more games than you lost, but that's pretty solid. I think it's pretty realistic.
Right. We also saw, I mean, all three wildcard teams last year were 11-5. So, you could have a season like that too.
Yeah.
The AFC is so good, man. And it's going to be tough for, I think, in my opinion, you got Kansas City and Buffalo and Indianapolis, I think, are locks to make the playoffs. I think those three teams are likely to win their divisions. And then you've got New England, you've got Miami, you've got Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, the Chargers, the Broncos potentially. Like, there's a lot of teams who could be vying for those wild card spots. So real quick before I get to mine, I don't think the Chargers are going to win this game. I don't think the Raiders are bad enough to be swept personally. But the thing that I think will change this is, like Alex was saying, like, what are the Raiders at this point? So just real quick, week 12, they get the Cowboys. Week 13, they get Washington. Week 14, they get the Chiefs. Week 15, the Browns. Week 16, the Broncos. And then week 17, the Colts, and then the Chargers. So that's a tough schedule for them as well down the stretch. So they could certainly be looking at, at this point in the season being, that 4-11 kind of record, or 4-12, I guess. So
it has all the makings of 6-3 and then 6-10,
which they've done the last 2 years. As for John Gruden's job security, they can't afford to fire him. Like, they have no choice. They have to hold on to him for like the next 2 or 3 years. Like, they can't fire him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that puts me personally at 10-7 as well. So I know people have been kind of.
I have to recount, because how was I more optimistic than you guys? Wait, I have to recount this.
The tables have turned.
Look at that.
But like, people have been saying to me, like, I've been like kind of trying to pump the brakes, and people are like, well, you're being so pessimistic. Are you even a fan? And it's like I've been conditioned by years and years of underwhelming seasons to be cautiously optimistic at this time. I'm also a University of Utah fan, and it's been the same thing in my entire life. So that's just the way my brain works, is to be cautiously optimistic. But right now, sitting here in May, I have the Chargers going 10-7, which I think would be a fantastic opening season for Brandon Staley.
Oh yeah.
That puts them right on, potentially on the borderline of making the playoffs. So yes, I'm like pumping the brakes. Like, I'm not expecting this team to be, Super Bowl contenders in year one, but I think they can challenge for a playoff spot, and that obviously shows in my 10-7 prediction right now.
I think we lost Alex. Oh, never
Well,
mind.
no, I was just looking at the schedule on my phone. So I actually do have 11-6. So
There you go.
yeah, so much for my heel turn. I'm the positive Chargers fan now, and you can redirect all your pessimistic claims to Steven.
I think Steven and I are slightly older, which means we're a little more salty in season. So I think we just like brought it down one more notch.
Yeah, we've been conditioned a little bit longer, but then again, Alex, until the Super Bowl, the Eagles had a rough stretch as well during Alex's high school years and middle school years too.
I will say, none of you are conditioned as me. The Sixers went 10-72 one year, and so none of you are conditioned.
Yeah, if there's anyone who knows how to trust the process, it is Alex and the three of us. All right, guys, any final thoughts here before we wrap up today?
Yeah, so we don't play the Jags, but I do want to shout out Urban Meyer for bringing Tim Tebow discussions back again. Thank you for that.
That's great. I'll just say, I mean, Steven usually recaps it anyway, but on Friday we're going to do that little fundraiser for Taylor and his home, his family. That was a awful situation. I'm glad the Chargers are stepping up. Pat McAfee and other Chargers fans are stepping up. So we're going to help. And if it ends up being $24 that we donate, hey, we helped, we tried, and that's all that matters. Everyone stepping up has been pretty cool. And that's something positive that I've really loved to see from the fans so far.
Yeah, the Pat McAfee thing was huge. I don't know if he saw it because the Chargers tweeted about it, but last I checked, Jen Mills' GoFundMe was close to $10,000 for them. So we're very happy to be able to help out. And like Tyler said, we're doing the live Q&A tomorrow as you're listening to this. And that's going to be set up in the super chat feature. You guys, like we've been able to do the last few times. So anyone who uses the super chat feature tomorrow during the Q&A, all of those proceeds will go right towards that GoFundMe. And hopefully we're able to kind of help out there. So that'll be a fun way for you guys to help out as well and participate in that kind of good service for him. So can't thank you guys enough for tuning in. This has been a fun episode. This is probably pushing an hour and a half with the 2 interviews at this point. I don't know until I edit the audio, but this is exciting times, right? We had the draft, the schedule release. So lots of good stuff here. Make sure and subscribe to whatever platform you're listening to us on. Leave us a rating, leave us a review, comment on our YouTube channel. If you learned something, what you think the Chargers record is going to be, we'll love to have some discussion there. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.